Watch right now on the Front News Project. Hellish carnage near Kupyansk, an entire Russian regiment destroyed. You have to see this. The collapse of Russian aviation. Su-30 and Su-34 aircraft destroyed. Exclusive footage. And also an energy truce. What is it? A real path to peace or just another bluff from Putin? Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines you can watch right now. Greetings, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the most important topic. The Ukrainian armed forces are destroying Russian aviation. According to Andriy Kabelenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council, the enemy lost Su-30 and Su-34 aircraft in a single day. And in fact, the destruction of these aircraft deprives Russia of half its annual production of such planes. Right now, let's talk about the remarkable achievements of Ukrainian hunters targeting Russian military equipment. Let's watch.
Another Russian Su-34 fighter jet was shot down in the USSR. The aircraft crew was killed. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Army confirmed the loss of another bird by Russia. There are two versions regarding the destruction of the Su-34. The first one, the aircraft near Snake Island was shot down by a Patriot system located somewhere in the Odessa region.
The alternative version of events, which is primarily being put forward by various Russian political commentators and independent military bloggers, suggests that the aircraft was not actually shot down by enemy fire, but rather that it simply crashed due to other factors. These are completely different things. And it crashed somewhere in the Kursk region. Why do they mention the Kursk region and a crash in Russia? Well, that's obvious. It means that there was no new success for Ukrainian air defense. No, and there never was. It was just an unfortunate accident, that's all.
Russian war correspondents and public channels unanimously talk about a plane crash, and that there was no shoot-down, nor could there have been one.
We've lost our Su-34. Both pilots died. Snake Island, Odessa, or Patriot have nothing to do with it. They started spreading it, and our people picked it up too. But
since the Russian Ministry of Defense has not officially confirmed the loss of the aircraft, this suggests that most likely the Su-34 was shot down in the Odessa region. This fighter jet is one of the key aircraft in Russia's tactical aviation. It is these bombers that are regularly used for massive airstrikes on frontline and rear regions, in particular to drop guided aerial bombs from a long distance.
The Su-34 is one of the main ones. Combat aircraft of the Russian Air Force, Russia has lost about 25 of these aircraft since February 2022. In general, the Russian Air Force has about 120 Su-34 aircraft. But now there is one less.
Monitoring public channels also report a possible loss by Russia of a Su-30 fighter jet. This was reported by the head of the Center for Countering Disinformation, Andriy Kabelenko. But this information has not yet been confirmed by the General Staff. The Russian Air Force has long since lost its air superiority. The Ukrainian army systematically takes out Russian fighter jets of various modifications. In 2025 alone, Russian military aviation lost about 24 birds.
just last year, 5 military airfields were hit by our long-range drone strikes. As a result, 15 aircraft were destroyed. They are not taking off anymore. Unique footage confirms the hits. 11 fighter jets and bombers, Su-30 SM, Su-34, Su-27, Su-24, MiG-31. 3 helicopters, Mi-28, Mi-26, Mi-8, and 1 transport aircraft An-26. Along with the equipment, ammunition, and fuel depots burned down at the airfields. In this way, Alpha SBU inflicted damage on the enemy worth more than $1 billion.
Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russian aviation has already lost at least 435 aircraft and helicopters of various types. The aggressor's military-industrial complex is capable of producing no more than 10 Su-34 fighter jets per year. This is a very expensive and complex fighter to manufacture. The loss of each such bird by the Russian Federation is a major success for Ukraine.
And now about something truly terrible. A passenger train came under enemy attack in the Kharkiv region. The Russians attacked the Chop-Barvinkove train with 3 drones. 2 strikes were recorded near the train, and another hit a carriage where 18 people were located. Fragments of 6 bodies were found at the scene of the shelling. DNA analysis was required to identify the deceased. 2 more people were injured. Here are the details of yet another war crime committed by the Kremlin terrorists. The Chop-Barvinkove passenger train is ablaze after being hit by Russian drones. One of the passengers, a soldier with the call sign Amar, is filming the burning carriages. A fighter from the 93rd Brigade, Kolodny Yar, kept his composure and immediately organized the evacuation of people. There were more than 200 passengers on the train.
The passenger carriage is on fire.
According to the soldier, this was a planned and targeted attack by the Russians. He says Russian drones struck the passenger train several times. When the first strike happened, the train stopped. Then a second strike followed. The soldier realized that the Russians wouldn't stop and began to evacuate people in an organized manner. This happened between stations, so it was difficult for ambulances and rescuers to reach the site.
I went to show my son to his father. I showed him.
I clearly showed him.
Come on, grab the suitcases, help me. Come on, grab the suitcases, help me, help me. I showed him. Happy birthday.
After people were evacuated from the train, the Russians struck it again. The Shaheeds also hit the nearby Barvinkove, the soldier says.
The train and the main target.
The train is the main target. We organized our section where I was. I see that on the other side, where the tail of the train was, there were ambulances. That's where they arrived at that moment. Did you see the police? Yes.
As a result of the strikes, 5 passengers were killed. 2 more people were injured. Both were taken to the hospital. The man was diagnosed with a partial amputation of his fingers. The woman had bruises. Another passenger is still being searched for.
5 passengers were killed. The remains of these 5 people have been found. 1 more person is considered missing. We are now contacting the relatives. This man is not responding.
A passenger train in the Kharkiv region was attacked by Shahed drones with online control. It is possible that Starlink was used for communication. This was stated by an advisor to the Minister of Defense and military expert with the pseudonym Flash. The pilot who controlled the drone via a radio modem did so deliberately and knowingly. These particular drones rank second in terms of quantity, flight range, and warhead weight. Due to the tragedy with the Chop-Barvinkove train, flags have been lowered at all railway stations in Ukraine in memory of the passengers who died. Throughout the day, flagship trains, which traditionally depart to music, will be sent off in silence. Due to the terrorist attack by the Russians, Ukrainian Railways is once again tightening security protocols. There, emergency drills will be conducted for railway crews. Passengers will also be informed about how to act in case of shelling or if a train is hit. And now, an analysis of the operational situation on the southern Slobozansky front. Enemy beasts, are you here? On the southern Slobozansky direction, the aggressor attempted to break through our defenders' defensive lines 14 times. These attempts took place in the areas of the settlements of Vovchansk, Staritsia, Prilepka, and towards Obukivka, Zelenyi, Vovchansky Utori, Kolodyazne, and Kutkivka. Humiliation, torture, deception when luring them to the front, and then, if they somehow survive, total unemployment and hopelessness await them in civilian life. Right now, we're going to tell you about the real everyday life of the Russian army. You definitely won't see this on Putin's TV.
If this friend doesn't want to carry out the task, to go there, do you understand? You slowly load your rifle, press it against his head and say sternly, "You have absolutely no choice left." Got it?
The number of mercenaries in the Russian army has surpassed 100,000, according to monitoring channels. In fact, every 7th occupier who came to Ukraine with a weapon is either a foreigner or received Russian citizenship through an expedited process in order to be sent to the slaughter more quickly.
A significant number of individuals are coerced and compelled to sign a contract through deceptive practices, trickery, or again, by intense pressure. In some cases, migrants simply don't fully understand what they're signing, what kind of contract it is. Some individuals are initially invited for a specific job, for example, working at a local shampoo factory. But in the end, in the harsh reality of the situation, they unfortunately end up being sent to fight on the dangerous front lines just the same.
According to The Telegraph, Russia is luring thousands of migrants into the war through deception. Recently, this has been happening through special groups. So-called recruitment agencies hire workers for regular jobs, but later force them to the front lines through threats. According to the publication, in 2025 alone, Russia sent at least 18,000 citizens from 126 countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America to the war. More than 3,000 of them have already died in combat. About 700 more people are being held as prisoners of war in Ukraine.
They informed me quite clearly, your current visa is expiring very soon, so you have two choices. Either you are faced with a very difficult choice. You must either serve a lengthy sentence behind bars in a federal prison, or you must choose to sign a formal enlistment contract to serve your country within the ranks of the army. Yeah, but
no one is allowed to contact their embassy. In Donbass, they simply don't operate. At the same time, the traditional recruitment continues not only from distant countries, but also from Central Asia. The Russians have been perfecting methods of pressuring these neighbors for decades.
As for the many undocumented migrant workers from Central Asia who currently live in Russia without valid passports, it seems to me that there is a complete lack of official records and no one really counts them at all. Furthermore, the various ways and coercive methods in which they are being sent to the front lines of the war are very different and often quite complex.
The main reason why the Russian Ministry of Defense is reaching out to foreigners is the sharp decline in the number of Russians willing to fight. And that's because with each day of the war, there are more and more stories about what is really happening there.
Thousands of appeals, statements, and complaints, almost like cries of despair, have been sent to every possible government agency. But the answer is always the same. There is no new information. Your loved ones are missing.
This is just one of dozens of wives and mothers of soldiers from the Eastern Military District of the Russian Federation who recorded a collective appeal asking for help in finding their missing relatives.
Even if
it seems insignificant to you, we would be grateful for any help.
Moreover, one of the occupiers explains where so many missing Russians come from. Ilya, who for several months was involved in attempts to capture Volchansk, said that the dead are simply left by Russia on the battlefield and are recorded as missing in action. The order for this came from the very top. At
my house, where I was staying not far from the grain elevator we were trying to capture, there are 10 corpses. They are listed as MIA, not KEA. I just want everyone to understand that just like me, they are state 200ths. They will never be recognized there. There, if someone is killed, they end up being recorded as MIA. Because it's easier for them to list someone as MIA, damn it, so they don't have to pay you any money.
So millions of rubles never reach those who send their relatives to war hoping for compensation or a new Lada Kalina. Active pressure due to a shortage of personnel has also started to be applied to Russian army conscripts. Many recent school graduates can't withstand the abuse and threats. They just can't take it.
About 5 people my age. A lot of people have died in the Ursk region. When they started coming in, some just went on their own. Well, like how many of us are going to the concert? They were sent abroad. Or at the border, at the crossing, they still get hit anyway. About 3 people were wounded.
Oleg also spoke about the death of his friend who was forced to sign a contract despite not having parents and having a younger sister, a sister who is a minor. After his death, his sister was sent to an orphanage.
An orphanage?
As the soldiers say, even getting sent to the hospital is a luxury not everyone can afford. For example, soldiers from the 49th Combined Arms Army said they literally ate nails just to somehow escape the lawlessness of their commanders on the ground. Already in another unit. One of the soldiers, Andrei Sharikov, recently recorded a video where he also said that his commanders simply mocked him, demanded money from him, and also they threatened to shoot him, which nearly drove the guy insane.
According to Sharikov, he is currently being held on the territory of the 71st Brigade and is being prepared for loading and sending to the combat zone. At the same time, he claims that he had previously officially reported his severe mental condition and the urgent need for medical assistance.
I'm mentally unwell. I want to see a psychologist. I'm prone to suicide and asked to be sent for rehabilitation to a psychologist because I am unstable and mentally unwell.
But even those who miraculously manage to survive this meat grinder and return home are not to be envied. For example, just recently, a number of Russian media outlets published statistics showing that more than 250,000 Russians who returned from the so-called special military operation are unable to find work. People are simply afraid of them because of their recent past. The authorities immediately intervened and the publications were edited, but this did not help to hide the truth. Putin's killers are not wanted by anyone, even in Putin's Russia. And
now we move to the long-suffering Pokrovsk direction of the front. Fierce fighting continues. In the Pokrovsk direction, our defenders have stopped 22 assault actions by the aggressors near populated areas. Rodinskoye, Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, Kotlina, Molodetskaya, Filia, and Daknaya. An energy truce. A topic that's on everyone's lips right now. The enemy is supposedly stopping the bombing of Kyiv, the Kyiv region, and in general is suspending strikes on energy facilities. What is this? Is this just another bluff from the Kremlin cannibals, or is it a real first step toward ending the war? Let's figure it out together. Is this another trap for the armed forces of Ukraine, or a gesture of goodwill from the Russian dictator? In Russia, they started talking about a ban on strikes against Ukraine. Here,
these are all the results of the work performed.
On the morning of January 29th, information appeared online about a possible Russian ban on shelling Ukrainian infrastructure facilities, which supposedly went into effect at 7 a.m. Notably, this information first appeared on Russian propaganda resources.
A ban has been imposed on any strikes against targets in Kyiv and the Kyiv region, on any infrastructure targets throughout all of Ukraine.
Such magnanimity from Russia, right in the midst of Ukraine's energy crisis, was immediately met with disapproval by Z propagandists who began shouting about betrayal.
This is just nonsense. No words. Freaking traitors.
Later, Z-blogger Romanov added that there was internal information being spread verbally, allegedly stating that the restrictions would remain in place until February. At the same time, the document itself does not specify any concrete dates for when the ban on strikes will be lifted. Russian public pages also write that agreements on an energy truce were supposedly reached during negotiations in Abu Dhabi. Putin's mustache. Peskov refused to comment on the publications about the energy truce.
This is a very bad practice. We call for reason.
An energy truce is necessary for the Russian Federation precisely at the moment of stabilizing the internal situation in the Russian Federation. Putin is panic-stricken by the prospect of social upheaval. All of this could provoke social unrest in the Russian Federation and, as a result, a change of political elites. Putin absolutely cannot allow this, so, albeit covertly, he gives the green light to the so-called energy truce.
So far, neither side has provided official confirmation of a ceasefire. In turn, the founder of the Gurk-Rakin unit, Konstantin Nemichev, noted the following.
It seems the energy truce is in effect on both sides. Let's see how it will be implemented.
Some experts believe that spreading reports about a halt to strikes on energy facilities may be an attempt to gauge the reaction of Russian society to possible agreements. There is also a suggestion that Russia has run out of missile stockpiles.
If this information is confirmed,
the energy truce undermines the main argument of the Russian side at a time when it is trying to increase its leverage in the negotiation process. This refers to the so-called energy terror. In other words, under the intense and relentless pressure exerted by the Ukrainian defense forces, Vladimir Putin was ultimately forced to abandon this significant strategic leverage during the ongoing and complex negotiation process.
Let me remind you, on January 28th, in his evening video address, Ukrainian President Zelensky stated that Ukrainian intelligence had learned about preparations by the Russian military for a new strike. And while there is still no final decision between the countries to stop attacks on the energy sector, Ukrainians must remain vigilant.
And now, it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Konstantinivka axis of the front. The Russian world continues here to destroy, kill, and maim. On the Konstantinivka axis, the enemy carried out 9 attacks near the settlements of Konstantinivka, Praitekaine, Preshaivka, Sofiivka, and towards Novopavlivka. Gerasimov has once again reported to Putin that the city of Kupyansk is almost liberated. But as they say, there's a catch. Kupyansk is almost liberated, but that's been the case for a month now, only in the reports of Russian generals. You'll now find out what the real situation is, how people in Russia are reacting to yet another liberation of Kupyansk, and where the line is that once crossed could see Gerasimov and his false reports shown the door.
This has never happened before. And yet again, Gerasimov has reported to Putin that Kupyansk is almost liberated.
On the eastern bank of the Oskol River, units of the 1st Tank Army continue to destroy the encircled enemy formations. Kupyansk-Uslovoy has been liberated. Checks and clearing operations are being carried out in the city's neighborhoods. Fighting is ongoing in the settlements of Kovsharovka and Glushkovka. And
if earlier Gerasimov was painting a picture of victory in Kupyansk, now it's about Kupyansk-Uzlovoy as well.
The statement regarding Kupyansk-Uzlovoy is even more absurd than the claim about the right bank Kupyansk on the Oskol River. Because if Russian sabotage groups really did enter right bank Kupyansk, there really were a lot of them, they really did establish themselves there, and they really did have zones of control. And more or less, this still corresponded to a certain reality. They were indeed present there. But as for Kupyansk-Uzlovoy, that's complete nonsense because Russian units along the line of contact are at various distances to the north, east, and south of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy. But on average, this distance is more than 8.5 kilometers, up to 12 kilometers from the line of contact. In other words, Russian troops haven't even reached the outskirts of Kupyansk-Uzlovoy.
As for Kupyansk itself, there really is a clearing operation going on in the city districts right now. But the nuance, as they say, is that this clearing operation is being carried out against the Russian occupiers. Oh.
Not only Ukrainian officials, but also OSINT analysts, monitoring groups, and Western analysts say that Kupyansk is not under the control of Russian forces, neither the right bank Kupyansk nor the left bank Kupyansk-Uzlovoy. Even Russian war correspondents, the so-called Z war correspondents, and the so-called Z community are saying this. But the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation seems to have chosen the strategy: if you're going to disgrace yourself, then disgrace yourself to the end.
In short, when it comes to lying about continuous victories, the Russian general staff seems to have outdone even themselves. And again, as further evidence, even the so-called Z-war correspondents criticized Gerasimov's blatant lies.
That Kupyansk-Uzlovoy has been liberated? Well, I don't even know. You might as well write that Kiev has been liberated. Why not at this point? Thus, no conclusions whatsoever have been drawn from the disaster of the assault groups being encircled in Kupyansk. Instead, the decision was made to make the situation worse with even more grandiose lies. The result is right outside the window. And
right here, two questions immediately arise. Why is a parallel reality being created in which Russia is winning, when in fact that's far from the truth?
This fundamentally represents a strategy of a different parallel reality where some kind of triumphant victory is announced, that has no real connection to the actual reality. And its mythology is maintained up to a certain point in the hope that, yes, Kupyansk will eventually be captured sometime in the future, and then Gerasimov, Kuzovlev, and Belousov will finally be able to breathe a sigh of relief. There, at last, we did it. But that's just it. The efforts currently being made by the Russian occupation forces are completely thwarted by the defense of the Ukrainian garrison, which is holding back the assault.
And the second question, where is that line after crossing which Gerasimov might be asked to pack his things and leave?
Gerasimov is also on the edge. As of today, General Mordvichev is being prepared to replace Gerasimov. And lately he has been appearing more and more often in Putin's entourage. Sometimes even in situations where it should be the chief of the general staff accompanying Putin. Mordvichev is being predicted to take Gerasimov's place, quite possibly. And it can be said that such a replacement is likely to take place, possibly even in 2026. But the problem is that Putin, as a person, systematic, from the KGB system and a former KGB officer, he doesn't like to publicly display internal problems within the security structures. And when the head of the general staff is replaced, this indicates that something is seriously not going according to plan.
In short, as long as Russian generals lie about victories, Putin is happy to believe these lies. The question of how long this scheme called better a sweet lie than a bitter truth will keep working remains open. And now let's move to the Hulyai-Pol and Orikhiv directions of the front. Let's be honest, these are also sacred goals for Putin and his entire entourage. Accordingly, the situation here is also extremely tense. In the Hulyai-Pol direction, there were 12 attacks by the occupiers in the area of Hulyai-Pol, Mern, and towards Dobropilya. In the Orikhiv direction, our defenders repelled 2 enemy attacks in the area of Stepnohirsk and towards Primorsky. Ukrainian artillerymen now have to work under difficult conditions. Because of the dominance of enemy FPV drones and guided bombs, they have to fire not only accurately but also very quickly. The fact is that due to the front line moving closer, the artillerymen are working very close to the enemy and are extremely vulnerable, especially to guided bombs, which the Russians use to shell Orikhiv and its surroundings. A report from the front lines by the TSN correspondent Ruslan Yermolyuk's film crew. Right now. For your attention.
In the evening, yes, there's a position nearby, 50 meters from where we were during the day, and another one is already set up 50 meters to the left.
The crew of this self-propelled gun works on the front line without rest or rotation.
I find myself thinking that I just want to walk through Kryvyi under the street lights just like that in the light. I really, really want to go home all the time. That's the only thing. Well, like everyone else, I think.
We have to work in tough conditions with enemy FPVs and guided aerial bombs in the air.
It dulls during work. It's exactly when you're firing shot after shot that you stop feeling fear. But when you hear an FPV coming straight at you, that's when the adrenaline kicks in. I don't know, you just try to cover the vehicle as quickly as possible to hunker down.
Now, camouflaging the vehicle and then uncovering it before work takes more time than the actual artillery strikes on the enemy.
There are a lot more restrictions now, both when moving and when camouflaging, because you can't camouflage the way you used to. It turns out you spend a lot of time just listening to the sky, and even more time waiting for the right weather conditions.
On the front line, our aerial scouts detected an enemy concentration. While the sky is relatively clear, the gun is quickly prepared for action.
Shot fired.
Even though it's a 1968 model gun, it's been working since the very beginning of the invasion, and the guys have never had any complaints about it.
Most often we target mortars in small groups of 2 or 3 people. They start to gather, then form up, maybe 5 or 6 people, and then they try to launch an assault. So our task is to prevent them from reaching their designated point.
When there were massive assaults, we worked for days on end, grinding down enemy infantry, equipment, and mortars with 122mm shells.
It used to be different, Brenya, 40 or even earlier, when there was not such an influx. FPVs could deliver up to 60 to 70 shots a day.
The intensity of artillery work now depends on how clear the sky is. Where these guys operate, the sky is constantly filled with enemy FPV drones and reconnaissance wings that direct enemy aircraft. That's why the gunners work quickly. And they try to be accurate right away because the other side also has counter-battery fire.
Before the frost set in, they tried to storm, but they didn't succeed. There were several tanks, there were APCs and motorcycles with high explosive fragmentation shells. So if we're firing at a certain shelter or house, it doesn't matter which, then we use high explosive shells.
The director, a driver mechanic, used to be the director of an oxygen station in civilian life and went through the ATO. And now it's already his 5th year here at war. He says you get used to physical exertion and harsh living conditions. You get used to it, but you never get used to being separated from your family.
You don't see your loved ones for 4 years. My wife raised our first child while I was in the ATO. Now my wife is raising our second and I'm here at war. And it turns out that she does all this herself.
One more shot and the cannon is camouflaged. The hum of drones can already be heard in the sky.
Drones. Drones have truly taken over the skies and a real drone war has already begun. This accounts for up to 60% of all hits in this war.
It's good if these are your own drones, but if they are the enemies, the risk of being detected and destroyed increases. And so every day, the gunners work on the edge, covering the infantry on the Orikhiv direction. That's all for today, but very soon there will be something new on the Front News program. Unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.